for another episode of Judging Softly, Judge Softly in Conversation with. And today I will talk with Dale Atkins. Dale Atkins is a licensed psychologist, a relationship expert, and the author of The Kindness Advantage. And that's also how we met, actually. So the first time when I met Dale was when she did a book presentation, when she presented the book, The Kindness Advantage. And from that moment on, after her presentation, I knew that one of the clues of my book, Judge Softly, which is unfortunately still only in Dutch, Oordeel Zacht, I will show it here, was one of the clues is that kindness is actually one of the clues of judging softly. So that's why I'm looking forward so much to this conversation. I have learned a lot from Dale, and I hope with this conversation she can inspire you as well. So Dale, welcome. And I'm going to ask you the first question I ask everybody. When is the last time you judged?
First, thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to talk with you, and congratulations on finishing and having your book published. This is really very exciting, and I'm happy to be among the people who are supporters of yours, and I wish you all the best. The last time I judged, well, I think it may not be the last time I judged, but it's the time that I think impressed me the most. And I would like to share it with you. It happened pre-pandemic because I was on a plane and I was traveling actually to give a lecture. And I was sitting on the plane, and there was a seat between me and a woman, and she was sitting next to the window, and we greeted each other, and she appeared to me to be quite pregnant. And when we took off, a little while after we took off, the steward asked if we would like something to drink, and she said that she would like a glass of wine. And I was quite surprised and, quite frankly, internally mortified, because I have a very strong feeling about pregnant women drinking, and I was very judgmental, and I was thinking about this, and I was aware of my thoughts, and I was aware of this internal dialogue that was going on, and what is she thinking, and oh my goodness, and I was in my own mind not only judging her, but I think I was almost demonizing her, that, doesn't she know about the research and blah blah blah. Okay, and I figured that, well, I must get this out, and I was working on my computer. And I started writing thoughts about this. Little did I know that she was able to see my computer and my screen, and she looked over, apparently, and she said to me, excuse me, she said, I just want you to know that I'm not pregnant. She said, I had a baby. And she said, and I'm really looking forward to my wine. I was so embarrassed. I was so, I was like caught like a deer in the headlights. And I felt so awful, because what I realized was I've lived my life thinking I'm a non-judgmental person. I live my life thinking that I give everyone the benefit of the doubt. Here I was being superior and feeling like, I know and she doesn't. And I was flooded with embarrassment. And after thinking, oh my God, should I say, no, I'm writing about somebody else, or I'm writing about blah, blah, I said, I'm so sorry. And I said, I wonder if you can forgive me. I said, I feel terrible, and I judged you. And it ended up that we had an incredible conversation for the duration of the flight. And I learned so much about myself. I learned so much about judgment. I learned so much from this young woman who shared with me how she was looking for this flight where she was alone. She didn't have to worry about the baby. Everybody was, her other kids were taken care of. And she was looking forward to this glass of wine. And it was a profound and important lesson for me. And so even though it happened quite a while ago, and I'm sure I've been judging since then, that's the one that helped me because it really informed me regarding kindness. It informed me regarding empathy. It informed me regarding assumptions. And it informed me about connecting with people and trying to understand how we have to take responsibility when we do something that's terrible. And this was terrible. And then how do we connect with that person in a way where we are holding the responsibility, but understanding if she said to me, I don't want to talk to you, just, whatever, that would have had to have been okay with me. But her generosity of spirit and her ability to engage was one of the lessons that I have kept with me over all this time.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's such a wonderful explanation or example of being judgmental. Thank you so much for sharing this. This is great. Thank you.
Even as I relate it to you, I can still visualize her and feel my embarrassment and my shame.
Yeah.
And again, staying in that moment and initially wanting to be so embarrassed and wanting to deny and all of that, but then just entering that space that was so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then seeing where it would go.
Yeah.
So I appreciate your question.
Yeah. Yeah. It brought you back to that moment, right? I think
it did.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing this story. Thank you. So to actually build on this example, and I really see you, and I think you are a kindness expert to me. I think that's also, yeah, you can call yourself a kindness expert. And then, so what in your view, I'm very interested to hear, what in your view is judging softly?
To me, judging softly is being able to include the many components that make up kindness, because judgment is not one of them. And generally, when we judge, we are putting ourselves separate and above the other person because we are critical and we sometimes condemn. And what that does is it shuts off our capacity to have compassion and empathy and to accept what their situation is. And it prevents us from connecting with them in an equal way and to see ourselves in them when they are having a struggle or when they are having a difficult time. So I think what's important is to recognize that we are constantly judging, and generally we're judging the person or the situation against ourselves and our own standard, or the standard that we've bought into, that is our societal standard. And somehow, their uniqueness or their choices or their situation contributes to their behaving in a way that we find less than or inappropriate or embarrassing or whatever it is. So for me, if we could remember the components of kindness and we can be compassionate and empathic and understand their individuality and be curious about what it is that is making them do what they're doing, and really try and get to know them or their situation before we blanketly condemn them. Because everyone has a story and everyone has a reason. It's really hard. But if we can judge softly, in other words, not immediately go into a rage or not get on our high horse or not be holier than thou, we then keep connected to that other person's humanity.
Yeah.
And we see that we are not so dissimilar, because in judgment, we separate ourselves.
Yeah.
And in kindness, we look for the connection.
Yeah.
So I think that we have to be kind to ourselves in saying, okay, understand my rage, but is my rage, if I let it out right now with this other person, is that going to help?
Mm-hmm.
Is it going to make the situation better? What would make the situation better? How might I express my disapproval if they're interested, right? Or how might I express my feelings about what this person's engaged in a way that it might enhance or move forward the conversation or the relationship?
Yeah.
So to me, judging softly, and Barbara, is more about connecting with ourselves, having compassion for ourselves and our own response, as we then connect with what response we are going to share, if at all. Because sometimes when we do the first step, we don't have a need to do the second step. No. And it modulates the way we look at that other person and their behavior.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's exactly. And what I really like is I wanted to say two things. One is I really like your I sort of a metaphor. I visualize it, putting yourself above somebody, right? I think that's sort of the start of where, and I developed a judgment circle where we always go through, like almost every minute of the day, right? Every thought will go through a judgment circle. And I think, like you said, like putting yourself above somebody, that's the start of where the circle starts to spin. And so I like that metaphor, or that's how to visualize it that way. Yeah, it's great. We talked a couple of times, a few times, also for my book, right? So you inspired me with a lot of wisdom and knowledge, and this point of putting kindness sort of in this wheel of judging circle. What I said, I think that is one of the clues of being able to pause, right? To pause before you start talking, before you react. So you also agree, or you feel that judging, we cannot not judge, right? There is this thought that comes up, but when you can catch it, then maybe you are able to pause. Do you also see that as the same way as I see it, or do you see it in a different way?
I like the way you frame it. I think that we have the thought, and I think before we get attached to it in any way,
yeah,
we just notice it.
Yeah.
And sometimes, if we're really sensitive, we can feel it. We can feel it in our body.
Yeah.
You know, are we getting a dry mouth? Are we getting a stomach ache? Are we getting tight in our neck? Feel how the body responds, because the body is a wonderful communicator.
Yeah.
And so many of us disregard what our body is telling us, and we try to cognitively work through it, and mentally then, we stay from our neck up, when I think when you're really in an emotional situation, you've got to just allow your whole body to be a part of what's going on, because it will teach us and it will guide us in the way we need to go. So if we notice a thought, which of course we will, because our mind is always busy, we notice it. And then I think, to your point, you breathe, you pause, and you say, oh, I wonder why that's here. I wonder why I'm thinking about that. Or I wonder why I'm feeling that. Or why is that getting me enraged? And you do that internal questioning, that curiosity with yourself. And then say, oh, I think I see what's going on. And I appreciate when you said the circle is like this, but once you put yourself ahead or outside of the circle, you disconnect from the ability to see that person as a human being, to see their humanity. And sometimes when we are very judgmental, we have been judged a lot and we don't feel good enough. So we have to say, hey, I'm better than you. There's an entitlement that goes along with that. It's highly unattractive. It often comes with power and status, often with wealth. But it also comes when one doesn't feel good about oneself. So then they feel they have the right to judge. So I think that the idea of judging softly is understand that we're all in this together. No one is better than anyone else, but we all make different choices.
Yeah.
And trying to understand why someone has made their choice and why we make our choices,
Yeah.
I think is really important as we try to understand this judgment.
Yeah.
Our mind will always be comparing and looking and observing. That's what we do.
Yeah.
We listen, we look, we sense with our sense of smell, we touch things, and we make an assessment. But making an assessment and noticing does not have to be a critical and harsh judgment.
No, exactly. That's and do you also see that it is the source almost of a lot of miscommunication? And of course, we can talk about what miscommunication is. But I think it's, in my view, a definition. It can be as broad as from polarization, like really, to miscommunication just with your partner, right? So there's I think a very broad definition of miscommunication. But can you talk a little bit more about that, like miscommunication, the source of that? Is that?
For me, miscommunication is that one person is trying to, they have an intention and they're trying to have someone else understand what it is their experience is, and the other person is not getting it in the way that the first person would like them to.
Yeah.
So then the second person responds in a way that is indicative of and reflective of the way they experience the first person's communication. Yeah. So generally what we'd like is, I'll say something and then you'll understand it and I'll know that you're with me on the same page, and then I may go a little further and then you'll come with me and then maybe you'll say something and I may not be with you there. So I'm still here and you're going here. And this is what happens because instead of saying, oh, wait a minute, this is what I heard. Did you say this? And is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Rather we say, oh no, absolutely not. This is what, and then we go off on our own tangents and we start accusing and making assumptions. And you always do this. And every time we're in this situation, this is what you do. Mm-hmm. And we go totally in different places. Yeah. So I think miscommunication is also about blaming someone else. You never understand, you never listen, you never, rather than I am having a hard time getting my thought across to you.
Yeah.
I am having a hard time expressing myself in a way that makes me feel you hear me. When you do this, I have a feeling that you're not listening. When you're looking at your phone and telling me you're listening, I don't really feel heard. Mm-hmm. When you're shouting at me from the other room while you're doing something else, I don't feel that I'm kind of number one priority.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, sometimes we just have to say, this doesn't look like a good time for me to talk to you about this, but I really would like to. So I think miscommunication happens all the time. Mm-hmm. Our response to it is what contributes to the continuation of miscommunication, which then ends up with people kind of, I can't talk to him or I can't talk to her. It doesn't make any sense. But even that, you can't not communicate. Mm-hmm. People say, I'm not communicating with you. Oh, yes, you are. By not speaking to me, you're communicating that you don't want to talk to me, right? Yeah. And so, again, since we can't not communicate, I think it's useful if we could all try and figure out how we might be able to communicate effectively, mm-hmm. authentically, from our heart, and be able to say, okay, now I have to just kind of stop and think about what you said, because either I wasn't expecting that, or that's hard for me, or I really need to come back to this conversation because I'd like to continue to go in a positive way if we can.
Yeah. For
me, a lot of miscommunication is the repetitive patterns that mm-hmm. we develop, particularly in partnerships. We think we know the person, and we do, but we may not know that they're capable of change or that we're capable of change. We assume that, well, this is the way I am.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I also really like this this thought of there is actually a lot of miscommunication, or there is maybe always miscommunication, but it's your response to it. I really like that sentence. That makes it also, again, and that's what I'm trying also with judging softly, by saying you cannot not judge, but then also with this, you cannot not miscommunicate. But there is this response again with how do you deal with this miscommunication, and how do you then even maybe with not communicating also communicate about this miscommunication. I really like what you're saying about that. That's a new view for me. Yeah, just to
Well, I appreciate that. I think what we can't do is control how other people respond to us.
exactly.
But
Yeah.
we can control how we respond to the way they respond to us.
Yeah.
So that, if someone's yelling at us, we can yell back, or we can say, this isn't helpful,
Mm-hmm.
or what's going on with you, or why do you think you can yell at me like this, or whatever you want to say. But
Yeah.
we only can control our response to someone else's, and in many cases, this is what it is, perceived definition of me, right? Why do you think you can say that to me? Why do you think you have the right to do that? How do you think of me, right?
Yeah.
I will reassess my position by telling you what I'm trying to have you understand. I'm not doing it very well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing it the best I can, but somehow I'm not getting through to you in the way that would help me. So we have to rethink this. And right now, this isn't working, rather than slamming the door and saying, I'll never speak to you again. I am, by the way, a proponent of taking a break, a timeout, a pause, as you said before, maybe taking a walk in nature, coming back, feeling better, and saying, okay, I think I feel a little bit better about how to talk about this, or writing down one's thoughts.
Yeah.
Going through them before even sharing something, particularly if it's going to be loaded.
Yeah.
But I really do feel that, sometimes we find out a lot about ourselves and our partners or the people we're talking to in the miscommunication. Wow, I said this, but she heard that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Rather than, you're crazy. Why did you think that way?
Yeah.
I wonder why she heard it that way.
Yeah. You can really build relationships, right? This way, you can just really, build on relationships. I think that's great as well.
If you're invested.
If you're, of course,
invested and connected, but if you have disconnected, if you have made the other person the other, and you've demonized them, you've devalued them, you only look at the points of difference, then it's very hard to do that, because there's no motivation. The only motivation is to prove that you're right, and they're either stupid or they're whatever they are. Whatever label you have given them.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you're in the pool and you have to swim and you have to swim with this person, you figure out a way to do this. A judge will tell a jury, and I don't know the program in the Netherlands, but they will say, you have to go in that room and you have to figure this out. You say, oh, we can't. No, you have to go in there and you have to work this out.
Yeah.
And you figure out how to do that, right?
Yeah. That's also
so many people jump ship because I can't do it.
Yeah. No, but really, and so really also be brave to sit in it, right? To sit in that moment.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Be brave, be courageous, be open, be patient. Be willing to be different. One of the things that I've observed, I think this is related, I hope I'm not going on a tangent. One of the things that I related during COVID is the resilience that so many people showed, not just by surviving, but by being creative in how this is transforming them. So people had to look at the way they handled things before COVID and say, that doesn't work anymore. I think I have to try it this way. Oh, I can't do it that way. I'll never be able to do that. And then what do you know? They do it that way and they learn something about themselves and they learn something about their relationships because they're open to transformation instead of trying to change the other person.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or the situation.
Yeah.
They say, what about this situation can I change? What about myself am I going to address?
Yeah.
Am I going to sit here and be lonely because I can't see anybody? Well, yes, I see I'm lonely, but what can I do about that? How can I learn about loneliness?
Yeah.
And what can I do to change that to make it easier for me? Where is the transformation?
Yeah.
And I say it because when you mentioned relationships, you mentioned pause, you mentioned brave. It is very courageous to look at yourself through your partner's eyes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Instead of insisting that they see you in the way you want to be seen.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly. And I think that also holds true for situations at work, right? So I know you're relationship expert, but you also work with clients on leadership, right? On how do you,
yes.
How are you, what kind of colleague are you, or how do you deal with your team, or how? So I think all what you said, which is wonderful, right? You can actually put that also on a work situation. So it's when you say partner, it's almost everybody you interact with.
Colleague.
Yeah.
People who work on your team, as you said.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of this throughout my life, working with teams, working with educational institutions, working with businesses. During COVID, what's been so interesting for me in this venue, working with organizations, with businesses, with law firms, with all kinds of institutions that have had to really examine their quote corporate culture during this lockdown, during COVID, having ways to stay connected during this time, being able to listen to each other, to encourage one another. And, everybody's working from home, or at least they were, and now we kind of are again. So you're really seeing people with their cats and dogs and their children and, and all these things going on. So you see them almost in their entirety. And you also get to talk about connecting with their humanity if someone's taking care of their children while they're trying to get a work deadline. So there's a different breadth of connection. If I may, I would share with you something that just happened this week. I've been working with a school system. And in one school, one of the heads of school has been having some very challenging times outside of school. And it has required that colleagues pick up the slack. Well, everybody's picking up the slack during COVID. Everybody's stressed out. Everybody is beyond the beyond. And there was beginning to be some resentment. There was beginning to be some concern. And the leader, the actual head of the school, brought together everyone. We had many sessions talking about what does everyone need, not just what does this one person need who seems to be falling down, but what does everyone else need? Because everybody was busy blaming this person, even though they were trying to have empathy and compassion, because everybody understood what was going on, but their shoulders were getting loaded down and loaded down. And the reason I bring it up is because what was so impressive to me was really in the thick of it, with people trusting each other to be able to share where were their disappointments, where did they feel their skills and their whole new skill set came into being during COVID, and how they wanted to be recognized. And might they be able to share some of what needed to be done, but be recognized as a team rather than, and kind of on an organizational chart on the same level rather than vertical. They were more horizontal. Exactly, rather than hierarchical. Thank you. And we were able to work this through, and it was painful, but it was eye-opening. And I must say that I have such high regard for the leadership that really tried to say, we're going to get through this. We are going to acknowledge and hear what people are saying, where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are, where they may not even perceive their weaknesses, but it's falling out. The collateral damage on their colleagues was pretty significant.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that leaders who are upfront, open, and honest and deal with things and don't put them under the rug and listen to other people's perceptions of what's going on through a lens of kindness. The thing that impressed me about this particular school system is that they were aware of what was going on well before COVID, and they wanted to create a culture of kindness. And they wanted to do it not only within the school rooms, they wanted to do it with the colleagues, the professionals, they wanted to do it with the administration, and they wanted to do it with the parent community. And then COVID happened. So it was really challenging, and they have not wavered from their desire. And this is also what's been going on with other companies that I'm working with. And I really commend them because it's collaborative, it is open, and it is a different way of leading.
Yeah. And isn't it almost the only way to get through a pandemic like this, right? Or to get through a crisis with any other crisis, or through a change as a company? If you're not in this full inclusive kind culture and true, right? Because there's, I think, a lot of companies as well who think they are, but maybe when you then start talking with people in the organization, it's perceived differently. But when you're truly inclusive and truly going through this process that you then help them with, I think that isn't that almost the only way to really get through something like this without losing people and without...
I think you just put your finger on it, without losing people.
Yeah.
I think what happens is you have to redefine your goals as an organization. And again, they are more broadly defined as far as the human capital that you're working with. So if you are working with people and you get to know them and you see who they are and you see what each of us brings to achieving the goals of the organization and how each of us needs to be supportive and support one another, then you are working with human beings to create a culture that will achieve your goals as an organization and an institution. And people become very loyal. They want to contribute because they are seen, they perceive that they are seen as individuals who have something to contribute. And this is something, if we take anything from COVID, I pray that we take this, that we were able to show and to appreciate our humanity and the need to collaborate, the need to cooperate, the need to be able to see what we wouldn't have seen in some cases had we not been forced to do this kind of communication in a box. You know, I mean, just having to do therapy in a box, it's very challenging. At the same time, number one, it's better than nothing. But then it becomes good in ways that we wouldn't have expected because we try harder. And I think for organizations, when things became too comfortable, we sometimes think we didn't have to try hard. But we must try. We must keep trying. To keep the finger on the pulse of the goals of the organization, the mission of the organization, and what the people who make up that organization need in order to work at their top capacity.
Well said. Thank you, Dale. I think, I mean, again, a wonderful conversation. I always have wonderful conversations with you, and I'm happy we've been able to record this and then share it with anybody who is interested. So thank you so much. Before we end, is there anything else that you want to say? Is there anything else you want to add? I mean, we can go on forever, I think, for many hours, because it's such an interesting topic that we both rely to, I think. But is there anything else that you missed in the conversation right now?
Thank you for the question. I guess I would like to ask the people who are listening to this to just reflect and to give themselves an opportunity to be kind to themselves, be less critical of themselves, because we can still assert who we are and we can still reach our goals and be very competitive without being unkind to ourselves and to others. And I think that whether we are coaching, whether we are parenting, whether we are, administrating, whether we are teaching, we are all role models. And I think that what we need to do is remember the kind of role model we want to be. Think of the people who were role models to us, the people who were positive and the people who were negative role models, and see what you want to take from them.
Yeah.
When Amanda and I wrote The Kindness Advantage, we wanted very much to cultivate compassionate and connected children who would grow up to be compassionate and connected adults. And what happened was that people started responding to the book from their perspectives as adults.
Yeah.
And that's when we realized that we really do have the capacity to connect with one another and to really see one another.
Yeah.
But we have to open up. So I wish you all the best, Anne Barbara, and thank you for asking me to be a part of this collaborative that is supporting your effort. And, if anybody wants to know more about my perspective, they can visit my website at www.drdaleatkins.com, and I'd be more than happy to engage with them. But in the meantime, even during COVID, you're reaching so many people, and I applaud you for that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dale. Thank you. You've inspired me all the time, constantly. One of the things that I also will never forget is we had a conversation and I almost finished my book. And then you said, you know what, at some point you just need to put a period behind your book and then have it published. And then maybe there's a new book coming from your hand, but it's just at some point you just need to stop. Otherwise the book is never coming, right? We learn every day. And it's,
I've written 7 books and none of them was finished.
No, exactly.
And I learned more about each of them in the aftermath of their publication. And whether there was another book about the same topic was not as important as what I learned from the people who read the book and who gave me feedback. And I hope, because it's living, it's still going on. So we have to put the period, but then we listen. And that's really where we learn. It's like you not telling me what does judging softly mean to you, because you want to know what it means to everybody else. And that's so wonderful because you're starting this conversation, which you've already written about. And that gives it a life of its own. Which is going to just keep unfolding. And I think that's wonderful.
Well, thank you. Thank you again, Dale. And we stay in touch.
Bye-bye and stay well.
Yes.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.